Nightmare. When my mother was pregnant with me, she told me later, a party of hooded Ku Klux Klan riders galloped up to our home in Omaha, Nebraska one night. Surrounding the house, brandishing their shotguns and rifles, they shouted for my father to come out. My mother went to the front door and opened it. Standing where they could see her pregnant condition, she told them that she was alone with her 3 small children and that my father was away preaching in Milwaukee. The Klansmen shouted threats and warnings at her that we had better get out of town because the good Christian white people were not going to stand for my father's spreading trouble among the good Negroes of Omaha with the Back to Africa preachings of Marcus Garvey. My father, the Reverend Earl Little, was a Baptist minister, a dedicated organizer for Marcus Aurelius Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, or UNIA. With the help of such disciples as my father, Garvey, from his headquarters in New York City's Harlem, was raising the banner of Black race purity and exhorting the Negro masses to return to their ancestral African homeland, a cause which had made Garvey the most controversial Black man on earth. Still shouting threats, the Klansmen finally spurred their horses and galloped around the house, shattering every window pane with their gun butts. They then rode off into the night, their torches flaring as suddenly as they had come. My father was enraged when he returned. He decided to wait until I was born, which would be soon, and then the family would move. I'm not sure why he made this decision, for he was not a frightened Negro, as most were then, and many still are today. My father was big, 6'4", very black, a very black man. He had only one eye. How he had lost the other one, I've never known. He was from Reynolds, Georgia, where he had left school after the 3rd or maybe 4th grade. He believed, as did Marcus Garvey, that freedom, independence, and self-respect could never be achieved by the Negro in America, and that therefore the Negro should leave America to the white man and return to his African land of origin. Among the reasons my father had decided to risk and dedicate his life to help disseminate this philosophy among his people was that he had seen 4 of his 6 brothers die by violence, 3 of them killed by white men, including one by lynching. What my father could not know then was that of the remaining 3, including himself, only one, my Uncle Jim, would die in bed of natural causes. Northern white police were later to shoot my Uncle Oscar, and my father was finally himself to die by the white man's hands. It has always been my belief that I, too, will die by violence. I have done all that I can to be prepared. Many people will recognize that as the opening words to the autobiography of Malcolm X. And this is the copy from Sarah Mack's stacks. And you will see that I had to take out my white gloves for the handling of this particular copy is very fragile, and I didn't want any of the oils from my hands to do any further damage to the book but I do want to hold it up and show the copy from her library. And then this is the copy from my own library. This particular book is the first autobiography of Malcolm X that I owned. I purchased it during my senior year of college at Johnson C. Smith University and read it in 1990. This book was one of those life-changing books for me. When I read it, and I love that I thought it was the kind of book that I needed to have in my library, and clearly my grandmother did too, that it was not just a book that kind of passes through your hands, but one to hold on to. I think that when I read this book, I just remember thinking about not just Malcolm X's commitment to Black people and to building Black organizations and mobilizing Black people, but I could not help but just be captured by the capacity for change. And what I took and still take from this text is that if there is something that you don't know, that there is a book that you can read, that there are people that will come into your life as teachers, and that you can travel and be curious about the people where you find yourself, and all of those things you can take into your struggle to be a better person. I think that even when we talk about now this language around clean diet, I was thinking about that when Malcolm X was discussing that in his autobiography. And so that's something that always stayed with me. And so when people mention it now, I'm like, Malcolm was talking about that in his autobiography. And I remember that from my reading in 1990. I wanted to share this particular text because we are coming up very closely onto the anniversary of the birthday of Malcolm X. He was born on May 19th in 1925, and I can't believe that if he had survived, he would be 95 years old. And so this is almost a century since his birth. So it's certainly appropriate to highlight this particular text and this particular copy out of Sarah Mack's stacks. And I want to thank you again for letting me share this collection of what my grandmother put together, the text that she thought was important. I'm glad that I'm able to share it. Thank you.